Okay, now it's time for the Mixolydian mode, mode 5 of the major scale. We want to start on C. First we need to find out what key we're coming from, okay? So in the key of C major, G is the 5th and G is the Mixolydian scale in the key of C. So if we want C Mixolydian, we need to find out what major key that comes from. So C would be the 5th of the key of F major, okay? So let's go have a look at our diagram now. Here we have F major scale written out, and directly beneath it we have C Mixolydian, beginning on the 5th note of the F major scale. We get the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B flat. Now how is this scale different to the C major scale? You'll see it's very close. The only difference is the flat 7th. Now by looking at this formula for this mode, what kind of chords do you think this works with? If you do what we did last time with the thirds, C, E, G, and B flat, for example, gives us a 7th chord. So you could play this kind of scale on 7th chords, or 9th chords, or anything related to that family. Okay, now, so our formula is all Mixolydian scales. You take any major scale, lower the 7th degree a half step, and you have a Mixolydian scale. Now this scale is incredibly common. You hear this in all kind of bluesy sort of songs. There's a lot of guitar players that you'll recognize stylistically from this scale who use the scale a lot. Here's the formula: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. Let's have a look at it on the fretboard here now. Here's major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. We need to flatten the 7th degree, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, flat 7. C Mixolydian. Okay, now, how do I make a Mixolydian chord progression? As we've done before, we need to take the 4 and 5 chords. From which key are we coming from at this point? We're borrowing from F major scale. So the 4 and 5 of F major is F. The 4 and 5 is B flat and C. Okay? So let's use the root of the mode in F for the Mixolydian, which is the 5th degree. Each of these you'll find is C. So we need to take a C chord over C bass and a B flat chord over C bass for our Mixolydian chord progression. Now who's never heard this chord progression before? It's very common. Okay? Very bluesy sound. And that's what you're going to hear from me when I play over this in a few moments. Now, it's time to look at our neck diagram. The neck diagram for Mixolydian looks like this. And like before, we have the root circle, that's a C. Our Mixolydian formula only needs a flat 7th from the major scale. So every time you see a B, it's going to be flattened, it's going to be flat 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7 over the entire neck of the guitar. Like I said before, the sooner you get familiar with this playing field, the better off you'll be. Okay, I just want to mention one thing before I go into the Mixolydian scale here. Now, occasionally I'll use some passing tones. Now, I'd like to make a point clear here that sometimes to add embellishment to the scale, you can use chromatic passing tones. Now, I think it's vitally important to understand the notes within the scale before you start experimenting too much with passing tones. But essentially speaking, for example, in Mixolydian, here's the scale tones: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, flat 7 that is, root. We have 7 chord tones, and in a chromatic scale there's 12, right? So that means there's 5 notes that we're not using in this scale. So to me, all those 5 tones can be used as passing tones in and around these primary tones of the scale. So even though I might occasionally use some passing tones, for example, if I went from the flat 7th of this scale, which is B flat, to the 5th tone, I could use all the passing tones. Actually, the only real passing tone is a sharp 5 here. So So what I'm saying is as long as I'm bookending the thought or the musical phrase with two very vital or important tones within the scale, anything can fit in between. For example, here's the entire chromatic scale. See what I mean? If you use it in a musical context, frame it with two important tones or whichever tones you prefer, but from the scale, it can work. Anything in between can work. But as I said before, I highly stress that you learn the tones of the scale first before you start experimenting with other passing tones, okay? So in this example for Mixolydian, I might actually use some passing tones, so don't be alarmed, okay? Here we go.